Okay, we're ready to go.
All right. Welcome to the Kingston Police Services Board meeting for April 15th, 2021. We'll go through the agenda. First, we have a disclosure of conflict of interest. Anyone? No? Okay. May I get a approval of the agenda? Jeff, Jimmy, good. And can we adopt the minutes from our past meeting from March 18th? Jeff? Bridget, thank you. Very good. Now we'll go through the communications. Firstly from...
Can we get a motion to receive them?
Can I get a motion to proceed with the communications? Very good. Christian, Jeff, thank you.
Jared, can you turn the little bit volume up? I barely can hear you.
Sure.
Thank you.
How about now? A bit better?
And maybe it's my computer then.
Can others hear me okay? Okay. Maybe it is yours, Jimmy.
Yeah. Okay, no worries.
Okay.
Okay.
We're good to go? Jimmy?
Yep.
Yep, okay. So first is from the Ministry of the Solicitor General, the Highway Traffic Act regulatory amendments to remove paper barriers to the commercial vehicle industry. Angie, may I ask you to comment on that?
So this came into effect March the 1st of 2021 in order to facilitate, as you mentioned, the digital documentation in the commercial motor vehicle industry, as well as inspection garages and used vehicle lots and wrecking yards. And so there are 7 supporting regulatory changes that have been listed, which will promote that. The use of digital documents, expand the use of digital communications via email, and it clarifies applicable rules.
Thank you. Any questions from our board? No? Okay. Next is status of on-site training at the Ontario Police College. I think that was due to an outbreak that they had in the past back in February. So that's kind of old news, yes?
It is now, because it'll be a later document in the package here. But at this point in time, the on-site training for the new recruits was paused for 14 days, with recruits returning home and continuing with virtual online training. And then at that point, the ministry was working with the police college and with Southwest Public Health to make assessments and recommendations for their return.
Okay, thank you. Then we have the 2021 COVID-19 relief funding from municipalities. That's good. And are we able to get some help with that?
Yes, I've already reached out to CAO Lenny Hurdle, and we'll be tracking our COVID-related expenses for this purpose.
What is the municipal property, if you can answer, what is the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation household data? I've never heard of that before. Anyone? Christian, you're smart.
I can only draw an inference here, but these are the folks who hold the data that assess your property taxes. So,
Okay.
So the inference that I would draw here is they would hold a wealth of data to be able to provide the assessment that everybody gets sent in the mail. So that would refer to their data set, which is probably a proprietary data set that falls under privacy regulations, but that can be shared probably for some aggregate statistical purposes would be my guess.
All right. Good guess.
Jared, you would probably know it as MPAC.
Oh, thank you.
So when it's written full, you may not recognize it, but
Thank you, Bridget. Next we have, is there any questions about that? No? Okay. Next we have a digital version of the request for driver's license review form.
So this digital form will be available to police as of March the 29th. and is used for reporting drivers who show signs of driving incompetence that may be due to physical or mental impairment that put the driver or public at risk. So this can now be submitted online through the MTO inquiry services system rather than paper-based and faxed to MTO.
Okay. All right, and then next is the 2021 promotional exams.
Yes, so the Ontario Police College promotional exams had been scheduled for March the 28th, but as a result of the current pandemic situation, Public Health recommended a postponement until the week of June the 13th to the 19th. So Kingston has always been a site where exams occur, and it's our responsibility to set up the venue that allows for physical distancing and enhancing and screening, etc. So further follow-up will occur confirming the next exam date. So it is actually been scheduled for June the 13th.
Okay. Very good. And then we have, again, from the Ministry of the Solicitor General, reduced suspension with ignition interlock conduct review program and measures as a result of COVID-19.
So this is the Highway Traffic Act requires drivers convicted of certain offenses under the criminal code, including impaired driving offenses, to serve a driver's license suspension. So for the first year, or for minimum 1 year for the first conviction, minimum 3 years for a second conviction, indefinitely for a third conviction with the possibility of reinstatement after 10 years if there are certain conditions met, and then indefinitely for a fourth conviction. So drivers convicted for the first time or second time alcohol impaired driving offense may be eligible to participate in this reduced suspension with Ignition Interlock Connect review program. So in return for meeting certain criteria, such as the installation of an improved ignition interlock device in their vehicles, eligible drivers will have their driver's license suspensions reduced. So as a result of the reduced court operations in response to COVID, though, eligible individuals who enter a plea of guilty to a first or second time alcohol impaired driving offense can temporarily apply for the program if the guilty plea is within now 282 days of the date of offense instead of 90 days. So the time period will return to 90 days once the courts return to normal resumption.
Okay. Any questions? Nope. And then we're going to go to the amendments to orders under the Reopening Act. I think this is old news.
It is older news. It really outlines the color categories as of March the 22nd. And at that time, KFLNA was in the yellow or the protect category. It also listed some amendments to the further amendments to stages 1, 2, and 3.
We are not there right now.
No.
So now we have a administrative forfeiture.
So this is concerning amendments to the Civil Remedies Act, including establishing an administrative forfeiture process. And this came into effect March 1st, 2021. And the new amendments of this administrative forfeiture allows certain personal property used in unlawful activity to be forfeited to the Crown without a court order in uncontested cases. So there are certain guidelines where the property may be subject for this forfeiture process, and the Crown Law Office Civil will make determinations whether to proceed through this process or not. And this will relieve some of the burdens on the court system and enable smaller sums of money to be forfeited. And this begins April 1st of 2021. So all funds from the forfeited property will continue to be used for cost recovery, compensation for direct victims, and grants to assist victims and prevent unlawful activities that result in victimization.
Is there like a simple example of what this would be like? Can you give us a simple example?
It could be a forfeiture of money. It could be, maybe a vehicle, those kinds of things.
Okay. Thank you. And then next we have the migration of the MTO collision application to the cloud.
So by the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario, since they're migrating its collision web application to the cloud, this allows the MTO to be more efficient and effective in its services. This migration will not impact the MTO's ability to receive electronic submissions of motor vehicle collision reports from the police. So in our case, our motor vehicle submissions are done by the Accident Support Services, and they have worked with MTO to ensure that there's this seamless transition that's occurring. So it's another benefit for us.
Okay, good.
So it won't impact us.
Getting with the times, getting in the cloud. That's good. Resuming on-site training at the Ontario Police College. So here now, advance a few weeks. They picked a date to resume training at the college.
Yeah, so they just started back on Monday. So they had staggered dates to arrive, the Saturday and the Sunday. They did active screening. They had to arrive with negative PCR tests within 72 hours of arrival. They're doing regular rapid antigen testings every other day. They're going to have their vaccinations provided there at the college on April 14th. They must wear medical grade masks. And they've got an accelerated program to complete those 20 days of training that they've got left. And it doesn't impact our next intake very much. So the next intake will be May the 11th for the next group, as opposed to the May the 3rd. So it's running along quite nicely, and it's all within the recommended guidelines of public health.
Good. And then we have the SIU quarterly report. Just gives the lowdown on how they're doing and how many, gives some stats with what they're working with. Do you want to comment on that, Annie?
I don't have really much more to say other than this is just for a 3-month period, and it just says fills the gap between them moving to now their fiscal report. They're going fiscally as opposed to calendar years. So this is a 3-month gap until their until their financial fiscal report of April of 2020 to March 2021. So it's just a 3-month gap period.
Okay. And we have the CAPG, and that's for call for nominations for the excellence in police governance. All nominations must be received by June 1st, 2021. If anyone wants to nominate anyone, that'd be good. And then there's a CAPG call for resolutions, which is the Canadian Association of Police Governance. And okay. We have a memorandum here from Inspector Matthew Funnell. And that is about the deployment for St. Patrick's Day 2021. Chief, would you like to comment on that?
I think Matt is here to speak to that, so I'll give him the opportunity to present that to you.
Okay.
I think Donna might have to invite him up.
Yeah, he should be on there.
Yeah, there he is.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Yes. So as you see from the report, St. Patrick's Day is a challenge for us each year. We've noticed over the past number of years, 4 or 5 years, that it has become a much larger scale event, similar to what we see with homecoming at University District. So obviously with the this year, it was drastically affected by the orders that were in place because of the pandemic. So I think we saw a very low key day, really wasn't very much activity out in the area, but of course we had to plan for it like past years because we really don't know until the day happens what we're faced with. So this year we were lucky. I think the Section 22 order, as referenced in the report that Dr. Moore issued, had a great effect because it really put a lot tighter restraints on whether people could be out and about. So that had a huge impact, we think. So on that day, we had 54 or 55 sworn officers out and 6 civilian members assigned under an incident command model. The deployment was sporadic over 3 shifts spanning from 7 in the morning till 8 p.m. And like I said, it was fairly uneventful over the whole time. We had 13 calls for service. We had 13 calls for service, 5 charges under the Liquor License Act, 1 Highway Traffic Act offense, and then we had no arrests associated with this year's event. So there was only a total of 41.25 hours of overtime associated with the event. So the cost was not very extreme this year. Between food and overtime costs beyond salary was $3,408. So if you have any questions.
Anyone? Questions? Okay. All right, well, thank you, Matthew.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, and then we have the quarterly statistical report from January to the end of March. This is,
Yeah. I have a few things to comment on. The crimes against persons, you'll note, has increased a little bit over the same time of last year. You'll see the drivers in this area are an increase in the amount of criminal harassment, harassing phone calls, and threat reports. And I can only speculate that these changes in these categories may be reflective of, the ongoing pandemic, whether it's the stressors and impacts that are on imposing anxiety on people during this time frame could be a contributing factor to this, whether it's job losses through COVID, remote working, those kinds of things. So I'm only speculating that this may be a driver in the increase that we're seeing here. Our crimes against property are down, and this is reflective of a decrease in theft, such as shoplifting. And for example, shoplifting incidents in the first quarter of 2020 would have been about 179. And the same period for 2021, they're down to 75. So you can see there's quite a drastic reduction in this area. Again, theft from motor vehicle is another drastic reduction. From 2020 in this quarter was about 268, and in 2021 it reduced down to 159. So these two categories are probably the most significant drivers in terms of the downturn in the property crimes. You'll note on there that drug offenses are up this quarter as a result of our drug unit spending more time on the street level trafficking versus the long-term drivers. We've been seeing increasing with respect to overdoses, and of course the opioid crisis is still continuing. So we're making sure that we're effectively doing our job in terms of the street level traffickers. We've also seen an increase in criminal code traffic offenses, and that has been, we've seen some increase in the dangerous operation of motor vehicles, as well as prohibited driving offenses, and that is what would be in that area of criminal code traffic offenses. And in terms of our calls for service, they're down slightly from 2021 during this time frame. You'll note that in 2020, of course, in the first quarter, the full effects of the pandemic weren't beginning until the middle of March and so forth in 2020. And yet in this quarter, we're seeing, of course, the pandemic is in full force for the whole three months. So that may contribute a bit to the slight decrease in the calls for service.
Okay. Yeah, it's about 10% less calls.
Mm-hmm.
Stay-at-home orders. And then the use of force for January to March. Anything
Yeah.
that?
So this report captures, again, the use of force reports that were submitted, again, through that 3-month period. In total, there were 26 incidents of reports that were filed. Some points of interest that I can give you some examples on. A firearm was for a pointing of a firearm. Firearms were discharged in 7 occasions regarding animals suffering from injury, and that would be the 2 deer and raccoon that were involved in those 7 occasions. An example of a handgun displayed and CEW deployed in one incident. I can give an example of where police attended a call of a male armed with a knife threatening people, and an on-arrival The subject became aggressive when advised that he was under arrest and threatened officers with a 12-inch knife. One officer drew the pistol, the other drew the CEW, which was deployed. And this effectively allowed them to disarm the knife from the person. He was taken to the hospital for the probes to be removed, and that's traditionally what we do, making sure everything's fine, no injuries sustained there. An example of a firearm pointed, police attended an address to search for armed robbery suspects. The police located subjects and drew the pistol and called subjects out of the residence. Subjects complied with police commands. 3 subjects were arrested without incident, and a replica firearm was located at the scene as well. No injuries. And another example of a CEW being displayed, police responded to a call of a suicidal male who had injured himself through cutting his throat. Male located in his bedroom, seated with his back to the police, who still had his knife in his hand. The CEW was drawn, but police remained at the doorway and used de-escalation techniques to get the male to drop the knife, and he was apprehended without further incident and taken to the hospital.
Okay. Board, any questions? No? Okay. Next, we have the annual summary of the activities and the financial report. So
This is for our community volunteers, and I have Matt here to speak to that as well, because the community volunteers fall under his portfolio.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So again, the report, I think you have it there, and it gives a bit of the background of the unit. So I think that's self-explanatory there. I will entertain any questions if you have them though. But just like other things, the 2020 events were severely hampered by the pandemic. So when you see the year-to-year comparisons there, because of the shutdown coming down in March, and it shut down basically March, April, May, and June, with the types of activities that our volunteers would be out there doing. So as you can see that even though they were on lockdown most of the year, or a fair bit of the year, there's still a lot of hours out. So we have a total of 855 hours that the volunteer unit was deployed, covering 2,644 person hours. So still pretty good representation. Things that they were able to do in and around the lockdown times, you can see that the bicycle pickups were still there. They were sent out 13 times for bicycles, managed to pick up 37 bikes. They were able to conduct 16 radar speed surveys for us. You see the special events and hockey games there. Luckily, we were still able to do one child identification clinic, and we were able to process 15 children on that clinic, so that was good. And our child safety clinics were reduced as well, unfortunately down to 3, but we were able to get those clinics done as well, and still managed to get out for about 57 foot patrols. So we still had pretty good presence from the volunteers working in and around the restrictions of the pandemic. They're a huge resource to us, as you know. So like past years, the main operating budget was at $21,000. The expenses only came in at $18,895, which left the $2,100 surplus, and we were able to put that to good use by purchasing the new Easy Child Identification Kit, which helps us with our clinics. So that was a win there, I guess. If it was a bit of a positive from money saved from activities, we put it to good use there. So in addition, you'll see the next paragraph talks about monies from the auction. We each year allow some monies to go for some appreciation activities. Often that's a banquet of one description of the other for the volunteers for appreciation for their time. Modified that a bit this year with the pandemic because they weren't able to gather. So the $2,800 expenses were sent up for things like gift cards and other things like that that we can provide to the volunteers for their appreciation. So overall, I think a good showing given the restrictions on the pandemic.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then the sure. Then we have the Ontario transfer payment agreement.
Yeah. So this is the transfer agreement that needs to be signed by the board. And it's is regarding funding from April 1st, 2021 to March 31st, 2025 under the provincial strategy to protect children from sexual abuse and exploitation on the internet. So a unified approach. So we have a total of $626,000 for 4 years. And it's currently the funding is for a child victim forensic analysis investigator, and that's currently held by Detective Constable Derek Frawley, as well as training money for our child pornography investigator, which is currently held by Detective Constable Paul Robb.
Okay.
Okay, so I just need a motion to allow the chair to sign off on the agreement.
Jeff? Bridget, all in favor? Thank you. And then there's no unfinished business, there's no new business, so may I have a motion to move in camera? Christian, Jeff, all in favor? Thank you. That concludes the public portion of the meeting. Thanks.